Good afternoon, CaTyra. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the Q.A.C. team podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Wow, I'm excited. I'm excited. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and get started and tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is CaTyra Polland. I am the CEO and founder of Love4words, which is an agency that focuses on editing and also copywriting. So I work with authors to help them edit their books to make sure that they shine and they're ready for the world to read, and just helping them, with wording, messaging, conveying their messages accurately and appropriately to their target market. I also work with businesses who might need help with web copy, proofreading reports or presentations, and other documents that are a part of their organization. So I'm really, a part of the literacy world. I'm an author myself. I do blogging. So I'm all about literacy.
That's great. And it's such a niche market as well because it takes some eye to on detail because with what I do, editing is part of the reporting and
Absolutely.
it can really be tedious.
Yes, it can. Yeah. I love every minute of it though. And it's necessary.
Yeah. I can't say I love it. It's fun because it's fun
Mhm.
because you get to catch the things that people miss, and it's like, oh, I
Y-
see this, I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why did you decide to be a business owner? Tell us a little bit about that story.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Oh, I'm sorry, sure. Why did you decide to be a business owner? Tell us a little bit
Oh,
about
okay.
that. Yeah.
Yes. So I've always been a very creative person. I started writing poetry in middle school, and I was always super excited about any projects that really allowed me to create from the ground up. I remember I took Spanish in middle school, and we had to create a menu in Spanish, and it was a great assignment for me because it was something I was able to prepare myself, and I presented it to my mom, and she was super excited for me because she said it looked like a real menu. So that was just an example of, things that I noticed when I was young that I really just loved being able to take control and design at my leisure and, having that autonomy and not so much bureaucracy or red tape. So I think that, well, I know it just continued to grow as I matured and became an adult. And I knew I wanted to be in a space where I could make decisions for myself and that I wouldn't be restricted. So I knew that entrepreneurship was the route for me. So when I got older, I started my first business in 2011, career prep, and I worked on resumes and cover letters, interviewing, things like that. And then I, left that one behind and I branched off. And in 2017, I launched Love4words, which is what I've been operating in since
Mhm.
2017. And just really enjoyed again the autonomy, being able to choose who I work with and choosing my target market and being authentic in the work that I do so that I'm best able to, help my clients. So I don't feel like I have to confine myself to a certain box or boxes. I can just operate in my genius.
Right. Yeah. My next question, that's a great segue because my next question, is always, so why did you choose this industry, right? And it's interesting because you kind of gave us a little bit of, you know, like the foreshadowing of, why you chose this industry, but give us a little detail on why you chose this. What did you choose it? Did it choose you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed writing. As I shared, I started writing poetry in middle school. I've written songs, lyrics, things like that. So I was always interested in the reading, writing area. I love going to the library. I'm actually at the library right now. So I knew that that I would be able to dive into that, throughout my life. So I published my first book in 2017. I had a great time doing that. I had a team to work with me, a publisher who's also a friend. She is also an author. So she was looking for an editor, and I did a sample edit for her. And she really liked my work, and she started referring me to her publishing clients. So I had a steady stream of clients coming in that way. So then I decided to launch my business so that I could, continue with the creativity, continue working in a literacy field, and encourage others to publish their stories. I usually work with people writing memoirs or biographies or autobiographies. So it's very personal work. I publish a book of poetry, so I know what it's like to share either traumatic experience or maybe uncomfortable experiences with the world. So I like to pull on that to encourage and again give recommendations to my clients who are doing what I've done before. So I just love being in that space to be able to help people tell their stories.
Yeah, it's interesting because you know you get it's a process, right? So somebody writes a book or a memoir, and then they hand it to you, and you're like, okay, so you got to proofread it and read over it. And it's got to be
Yeah.
meticulous. And tell us a little about the process of what's it like to edit and look at these.
Yes. So yeah, it can be tedious. It depends on the work though. So before I, onboard a client. We have a consultation call. Well, there's a consultation form. They'll include like a sample edit, tell me more about the backstory of why they're writing their book, their target market, turnaround dates, things like that. They'll attach a sample. I'll do a sample edit. So during that sample edit, I'm reading through it to see what stands out, positive and things that could be better. So I'm looking at, language. Does this language align with your target market that you've indicated on your consultation? Are you making references that are relevant to your target market? Are you including enough information for your readers or are you leaving them hanging? Is the information consistent? Do you have redundancies? Did you have a gender reveal in chapter 12 and then you have that, the same gender reveal 5 chapters later? Are you spelling the character's name the same throughout the book? Um, does maybe the gender of the pet change all of a sudden? Or a trait of your character, like their eye color or hair color, has changed without explanation? So looking for those types of inconsistencies or repetition throughout the work. And most importantly, keeping in mind the book is written for the reader. So, if I'm looking at this as an editor, yes, I'm here to, fix the grammar and things like that. But the end goal is to make sure that your book is resonating with your target market. So I'll be pointing out things that maybe um, will disengage your readers. So maybe you've spent some time talking about the outfit that your character is, wearing, and then the next chapter you talk about something that happened, 10 years ago. So what was the purpose of talking about their outfit? Is there a connection? Are you going to come back to that at a later point, you know, um, and really just making sure that what you're putting in there serves a purpose and that you're not just putting words on the page to say you have 2,000 words on the page or however many pages of words. It's
Yeah.
important to maximize the space that you have. And that's not always easy because sometimes, it's not always easy to write succinctly. That's why it usually takes a couple of rounds. But as the editor, I'm there to help you, get to the stage where it's straight to the point. It's not too wordy, but it's captivating and engages. One thing I've learned as a writer is the shorter pieces are the hardest ones to write because you only have so much space and you want to make every word count literally. So, as a writer, as an editor, I find that my experience on the author side allows me to connect with my clients, which makes for um, it builds the trust there because they know I've been in their shoes, and I'm actually working on my next book, so I'm in their shoes right now. So
Mhm.
it's definitely been helpful
Right. Yeah, and
for
it's
me. And
amazing.
then yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Because there are so many steps to editing. It's not like
yeah,
you read it, oh, here's spelling and grammar. Okay, it's done.
right,
It really is so many different segments of, spelling, grammar, like you said, outfits, and
right,
does it match from chapter to chapter?
yeah,
And like you said, the biggest one is your audience going to be engaged in what you're writing. It's so important,
right,
right? Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Jeez.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced when you were creating this business and getting started.
Yeah. So Mm, I remember when I started, I did most of the work myself. I had a score mentor, so that was helpful. But other than that, excuse me, I didn't necessarily have like mentors that I was calling on. So I remember it being a solo experience, which isn't in and of itself a bad thing, but it would have been helpful and probably easier for me if I had had like mentors that I could have called on and referred to when I had questions and things like that. So that was a challenge at times. It's still sometimes a challenge. I have gotten to a point where I do outsource. So I work with contractors who can help me. So that has obviously made my journey easier. So I'm grateful for that. But
Yeah.
sometimes, like there are, I had a virtual assistant. I don't have one anymore. So now I'm back to doing like the administrative work. So that pulls me away from the editing component. So that can be a challenge as well. But I mean, I'm not alone in that journey. I know a lot of other um, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs are in the same boat, and there's a solution to every problem. So I don't let it get me down or like stop me from pursuing my dreams. So every journey has its bumps. So it's not going to deter me. It's just something I have to continue to work through.
Yeah, I think you hit it perfect. As an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you have to wear multiple hats, even for your own business. You have to
Hmm.
do the roles yourself, and when
Hmm.
you don't have the help, you make it work. When you have the help,
Yeah.
you outsource it. And you just make it
Yeah.
work. That's
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Great.
Mhm.
So, tell us a little bit about what are some of the expectations for your business in the next year or two? What are you hoping to
Ye-
accomplish?
Yes. So my expectations are to onboard another virtual assistant. That is a goal for sure. So
Okay.
they can take on the administrative component um, and continue to help authors, continue to work with authors who want to tell their personal stories. I have been looking at some anthology opportunities for myself as an author, but I'm open to also maybe producing an anthology is something I thought about. I haven't, acted on that, but that is something that could potentially be on the table. I am actually right now curating the 2025 editors calendar, which will feature 12 editors and just bring editors to the spotlight because we're typically behind the scenes. And I created the calendar to make sure that we are acknowledged for all that we do because our work definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
And, the authors obviously will get the credit for writing the book, but I see a lot that editors aren't usually as, I think it's getting better, but not as vocal about the work that they do. It's like I
Yeah.
edited the book, I'm behind the scenes, that's where I'm going to stay. And that doesn't have to be the case. As the editor, you can, say, hey, I edited this book and this is what I was able to accomplish in this book. And this is how this is why my clients appreciate me, and this is why I do what I do, things like that. And I've
Yeah.
seen it evolve. I've seen more podcasts where editors are talking about what they're doing. I've been on a few. I have my own podcast, Editor Knows Best, where I do interview other editors. And I've been to like ACES, the American Copy Editors Society. So I just recently joined as a member. So I presented at their conference in April in San Diego, and I'm going to be presenting at the VCon, which is their virtual conference in just a few weeks, actually. So spaces like that, I've definitely seen growth in appreciating, acknowledging, and celebrating editors, even though editing is what I call a silent art, where, it's not something you can, well, not typically, you don't like hang up, it's not going to be put in a museum, showing the edits that you've made on a book or like, something like that. But it's still an art and it still has a lot of value. And I think it's important to amplify the voices of those silent artists out there, like publishers and editors and formatters and book cover designers and all the people who make the wheels go round but aren't necessarily at the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a contest idea for you.
Oh, let's hear it.
You have, you have editors all submit to you each document, and they can all see who had the most edits in one document.
Oh yeah.
The circles and the lines and
That's
the
a fun one.
colors.
That's a fun one.
That would be a good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell our audience, how do we find you and how do we contact you?
Yes, yes. Thank you all again for tuning in. So you can visit my website. It's love4words.com. There's a consultation form on there. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. I'm on LinkedIn, CaTyra Polland. I'm the only one, so I should be pretty easy to find. I'm also on Instagram. CaTyra Polland is my it's just CaTyra Polland, no space, no underscore, just my first and last name. So you can find me there. And I'm also on Facebook. I have a business page, Love4words editing. You can type in Love4words editing and it should pop up. So yes, you can find me all those places and let me know if you have any questions or you're interested in knowing about the process of working with me.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yes.
So give us one of your crazy stories or the craziest edits that you've had.
Yes. So I edited a novel that was almost 600 pages. It took me quite a while, but there were a lot of characters in the book. So I had to, have a style sheet and keep track of who those characters were. So it was a very interesting project to work on. It was, excuse me, fantasy, which I don't typically edit. I usually stick to nonfiction. And there were some words and there was a language that the author created. So that also brought another element because they weren't, words that we use. So I had to, have open communication with the author to say, hey, maybe you should have a glossary because your readers don't know this language that you've created, in your book. So that was a suggestion that I made. And then also suggesting that they have like a character glossary because there were probably maybe 30 or 40 characters. So combining that with the fantasy with fantasy, which isn't the genre I typically edit, in addition to the numerous characters and him creating a language, it made for a very rich experience. I definitely learned a lot about fantasy and what that entails. But it was a new experience for me. So some of it was a bit uncomfortable, but no journey is without discomfort. So it was a great experience, but it was also a tedious experience, required a
Yeah,
lot of energy for me because it was a new territory for me.
right. And that's why people need to hire you
Yeah.
because you can pinpoint. And like you said, you offered a suggestion of a glossary. And I wouldn't have thought of that either. I think that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
a really
Yeah.
good thing. That's why you do what you do. That's why you're a professional.
Yeah, and the client was receptive to that. So that's always the best part of editing is when the clients recognize, the value of the editing and they appreciate, my recommendations and my expertise. So that's my favorite part of editing.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you. Well, CaTyra, thank you for coming on to the podcast today and interviewing. It's
You're
been a great,
welcome.
great time. A good
Yes, thank
story. I
you.
really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. It's been fantastic.
You're welcome. And thank you so much, Charles, for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Okay.
You too.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Q.A.C. Team podcast with your host, Charles Luttrell. Connect with us on the web at QACteam.com, TikTok at Q.A.C. Team, Facebook and Instagram at QAC.team. Thanks for your support.